Hello, everybody, and welcome along to today's Shadow Work podcast with my dear friend Nova. Hello, Nova. And today we're going to be focusing on the topic of ghost hunting, not just exclusively ghosts and not just hunting them, but we're going to be sharing some of our own experiences, some of our observations. Certainly, I was a fan for many years. I think close to about 18 years of UFOs and ghost hunting mixed. If you watch my YouTube videos, my recommendations up to about 2017, that's all I obsessed about. And so, yeah, we're going to share some of our experiences. And really, the purpose is to help everyone just reflect on these activities themselves and also some of the experiences that people have. Feel free to share your experiences in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And we also love getting requests for new topics to cover. So yeah, let's get started. I feel like, is there an experience you'd like to share, Nova, or would you like to start with some of your observations about what you've seen others doing?
The only experience that I had was that one time I shared in our first podcast where I saw a ghost. I could retell the story, but that's all I have.
That's cool. Yeah, maybe you could give a quick summary of it. It would be fantastic to hear about it. It'll help me as well.
Yeah, okay, great. So at the time, I was going through a dark night of the soul from all my shadows, and especially from being in a religious cult. And it was I think it was in the morning, and I was really in a bad vibration. I was really stressed out, and I had a hard time relaxing during that time because there was just too much. I was making pancakes for my sister, and she was there. And where our kitchen is laid out, you can see like the hallway from the kitchen if you just like turn your head a little bit there, right? So I'm like making the pancakes, and my sister is watching me like cook them, and like I'm flipping them and things like that. But I'm kind of like preoccupied in my mind because I'm, the isolation and stuff, you get stuck in your head a lot. So I was kind of angry during that time as well, like a lot of self-hate, and feeling misplaced in the world, and it's just frustrating, right? And as I'm like focusing, like trying to focus on the pancakes, like I noticed something in my peripheral vision. And the hallway was dark. We have a very long hallway. So when it's dark, it's dark. And when there's something there, it's there. And I could like kind of see it in my peripheral, but it's not even my peripheral vision. It's actually a little bit better than that. And I started to like sense like something. It felt like a ghostly figure. It was like white, and it was like a woman. It felt like a woman with like a long dress, and she was just walking like really, really slow, but she was getting a little bit closer every time. And I don't know why, but I snapped at her and I yelled at her. And looking back, I kind of felt like I shouldn't have, but my sister was right there and she didn't see what I was noticing, and she was focusing on the pancakes, and I yelled, "Get out." And she like turned her head and she was like, "Who are you talking to?" Like, still what was there. And I didn't say anything. She didn't say anything either. So whatever, we're gonna eat pancakes. But I remember that experience. And it was really strange. When I have these experiences and like the mindset that I was in, I'm not looking for these things. I'm not provoking these things.
Yeah.
Sometimes people would be really excited to like see something like that, but like for me at the time, not really, and I'm just preoccupied. So I just got frustrated and I yelled at this ghost, and I kind of feel bad because I don't think she was threatening. I think it was, I don't know. I guess it was just bothering me somehow. I don't know. If I could apologize, I would, honestly, because like she didn't deserve that.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe she's watching now.
Yeah. It is said that doors are portals. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in my hallway, there's like it's like a T, right? And there's so many doors there. There's like the garage door, another door, right on the opposite side of it, and then there's my sister's room, And then like where it makes the tea, then it's like my room, the bathroom, another room, and another bathroom. And there's a lot of like
Wow.
doors in this area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. Yeah. Thank you for sharing it. It it feels like you, from what you're describing, that you knew that it was a ghost. Like you could discern quickly that it wasn't in this like 3D physical reality, that it was somehow something else, somewhere
Yeah.
else, but there, and you could see it. And you described, I hear a lot of people talking about, their peripheral vision, which I feel is because the brain, our eyes don't see, it's our brain, right? And so our brain is constantly filtering out, um, everything, just like, we're doing a Zoom recording, and it's compressing everything and it's simplifying it all for the human consumption. So it's nice and easy to process. But in
Mhm.
that takes away, the, all the truth, like, and especially things that don't fit, that the brain isn't like necessarily worried about or focused on or feel it's a threat, and is great at just filtering them out and saying, well, they're not interesting. But the peripheral vision, it's not really focused on. And I feel that's why we tend to see these things more, because we feel a little bit let down by our brains. We're like, hang on a minute, I'm pretty sure my eyeball saw this, but you're just saying that it's not important, but it's important here, but not here in my
Yeah.
vision.
Yeah, that's so true. It's our brain that filters like what we see. People think it's the eyes, but it's not. My father only has like one eye that I think he sees out of. And I forgot exactly the details of it, but he mentioned something that even if he were to get surgery to fix it, he's been that way for so long that his brain won't adjust to it. It'll be like as if he never got correction for it,
Wow.
because it's the brain that is already programmed. So even if you try
Mhm.
to fix like the eye, it won't do anything, you
Yeah.
know?
It is fascinating. I'm sure I heard, this is years ago, I think I heard that about 80% of what we actually see is filtered out by the brain. And it does feel like it makes a lot of sense. Like, I guess there's a kind of survival, almost like the reptilian brain focus on, well, is it threatening or not? Is it loving or not? Like, I need to decide quickly. Don't give me all this information. I need to focus on something. But when you're seeking more, or like you, it's the same with me. When I've seen ghosts, I've not been focused on, particularly on the area around me. I've kind of been a little bit of a daydream, doing another task typically, but not stood there like staring at the corner of a room, thinking, appear, appear. Like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to share a couple of experiences with you. I had many experiences as a child, I think up until about the age of 6, and I saw a lot of shadows. I remember seeing in my parents' bedroom this like shadow. I mean, what was it really? It was really hard to tell. It kind of looked like it was this large, almost like a salamander like shadow crawling across the top of the curtains and then down the curtains. And it was looking at me and coming towards me. And I saw that was very common for me, seeing these shadow beings. And when I asked my parents about it, they said, "Oh, they're ghosts aren't. They're just shadows. Like, it's literally just a shadow. There's no ghost there. Ghosts don't take shadow form." Which wasn't the best advice. And I kept seeing it, and so I like many of us do, I made that about me. I said, "Well, I trust my parents. I love my parents. They're telling me that this isn't true." So I'm not trusting what I'm seeing. And so I'm now going to, and I began to like switch off that ability quite quickly, and, over the space of maybe a year or two. And yeah, those things never appeared until later in life. Um, when I must have been about the age of 16, um, maybe 17, maybe early 17. I was working in the summer, doing like a dish and pot washing at a local restaurant, and it was a really old restaurant here in Scotland. Everything's so old, and I also knew the family. It was this family run place, and knew the owners and their kids, and I was in this, what I can only describe as the dining room, like the restaurant main area, which wasn't used that much. There was mainly like a bar area that was used for food, but in the evening, you maybe get one or two guests coming in, and having meals. After that, I'd clear up and I'd go and do like polished cutlery. So I'm standing there polishing this cutlery, staring forwards out to this beautiful big bay window out to the sea across the Firth of Forth in Scotland. The view is just stunning, like it just mesmerizes you. And I was aware, fully consciously aware in my peripheral vision, there's a like a service door to the side with a little glass panel in it, and there was a head like that looking through. And the owner would do that loads. She'd just check because the light was on, and she wanted to check if I or someone was in there, and she'd come in and turn off the light. Anyway, that happened like 2 or 3 times. I remember looking and not quite catching them, not being able to see them. So I picked up my tray. So I'm getting tingles down my spine. Picked up my tray, walked through the door, and it's like one of these like doors that flips backwards and forwards. And just on the other side of it, there was, I passed. So you were talking about doors and portals. There's a door to my left which went out to the main reception area, down a corridor, and then the door to my right was a small staff room, really quite small, just enough for like a little dining table, maybe 2 or 3 people could sit in it. And as I walked past the room, there was no doubt in my mind, consciously, that there was a being stood there right next to me, and they were tall. They were like six, almost 7 foot tall. And the son of the owners was tall. He was about 6'2" or 3", and it was really common. He was so polite. And if you ever wandering around with your tray or whatever, he would stop and like stand into a doorway. And so I literally, as I approached, although it was clearly like to me a really tall shadow, I thought it's just the sun standing there. And it was only as I passed underneath like the head of this being, it went like that.
Oh my God.
And the shivers down my spine. And it was looking at me like I was just trash, like I was, there was some sort of horrible waste of space.
Yeah.
And the energy, and that shifted the energy in me. And as soon as I just walked past it, I mean, all this happened in just seconds, right? I felt like that is awful. Like, who would do that? And as I turned around, there's just nothing there. There's no, and I went and I looked, and there was like nothing in the room. And then I looked around, and then I went and called around all the nearby rooms just in case, and hallways, see if it was someone there. There was just no one there. And that's when I realized that there was just no possibility, because all the doors are really noisy. You hear them going in and out. No one can really go and hide, especially if you're like almost 7 foot tall.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And I just went through to the bar, and I told the barmaid, who was a friend, and I was like, I've seen a ghost. And looking back, and I don't want to like, jinx these things or make them, more fearful than they are, but the years after that in my life were not good. I did struggle for a couple of years, and I was off to university, and I really struggled with a lot of my shadows, like a lot of the things, self-doubt and lack of self-confidence. And I never realized until later that there'd been this kind of trigger moment that a lot of that started happening. Whether that being had anything to do with it or not, I just know that there was definitely a timing in it.
Yeah.
And since, I would say, obviously things, well, not obviously, if you're new to this podcast, for me, when I went through my spiritual awakening in 2017, it changed everything. And so now I see ghosts all the time. And as my third eye's opened up and continues to open up even more graphically, it becomes much more common for me. But I still remember very vividly what it was like, because I was shut down from 6 to about age 40. That those years, I would spend a lot of time hunting to try and find the evidence. Right, it's a very human thing. I want to see or hear or feel, or for others to experience the evidence that this is real, that there are these other dimensions, and that these other beings like ghosts are real.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's one thing when you think you see something, but when you hear something and then you feel like an emotion like that's strong. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. The only time I've seen, like, I've actually seen shadow figures, but like not in my peripheral. Like I actually like had seen them, The
Mhm.
only time that it was in my peripheral was that ghost. But for some reason at the time, you know, when I did see shadow beings, which I saw like twice, and they were both in well, one of them was in a seminary at the time, when I was going to seminary for it's like religious class. It was
Mhm.
early in the morning, and then the other time was in history class in my senior year. And I sit at the front of the class, and then when I see them, my teachers notice me looking at something that isn't there, and then we both like synchronize, like look at each other, like, what were
Wow.
you looking at? Like he didn't say anything, they didn't say anything, but it's
I
like
caught
I
you.
can tell. Yeah, it's just like it gets your attention sometimes when it's just like when you're like, what's going on there? What are you seeing? And it's like there's nothing there. You know, it's a classroom. Like there's nothing on this wall that you should be looking at. That you know, so
Yeah. Well, that's incredible. Yeah, especially like that confirmation, right?
yeah.
Like I was saying, I always looked for that confirmation, um, and like that somehow there'd be this validating moment. And I think it's really funny. Like you got what many people would crave, right? Like an independent, you know, a third party, you know, confirmation of what you're experiencing. Um, And yet, when I spent so long watching ghost hunting shows, I remember my two favorites were, and I guess they would, if I still watched them, they would still be my go-tos, would be Most Haunted in the UK, and then, or UK and Ireland, Scotland, they go around a lot. And then also Ghost Adventures in the US and North America. And I know they travel a lot. And I always, I couldn't understand like my addiction to them in some
Mhm.
respects because I didn't really know what I wanted. I didn't know what I hoped to get out of it. I just knew that there was this feeling I got when I watched those shows that I would feel like this excitement about finding something, often craving for validation and evidence, and yet there was something quite compelling about the energy of these shows. I did have um, I think it was just into I find it really hard to place the year, but something like 2018. So I had been through my first awakening. Like I started meditating each day, and I'd started to in the first few weeks started to ask my spirit guides for messages that I could turn into songs. But I didn't really have any other abilities activated at that time. And I remember, or so I thought, and I remember running in my 5 a.m. morning run out in the hills, just the south of where I live in this little town in Scotland, running down this hill, and you can see right over the down to the Firth of Forth, and you can see quite far out, maybe like 20 miles each way, and it's just stunning. It's a really beautiful area, and there's a standing stone off to my right side. I don't know if it's dated. I don't think anyone really well. I don't think our modern history can describe what it is. I know fine well what it's for now, but it is in a direct line with some of the geological features. And so I'm running down the road, and I was very used to, still am very used to things coming from it in the periphery. So I would see like, I mean, there's badgers and foxes and deer and hare, rats, mice, like just everything, and it's beautiful. Like, and all I would ever do is if I saw something, just kind of stop for a moment, let it pass, or say hello to it, or whatever I decided. And just ahead of me, maybe about 10 meters away, I saw this thing coming in from the left hand side, and it was human height. It was above the ground. It was maybe about a meter above the ground, and it was very slowly coming across the road in front of me. And so it came very clearly from my periphery and just into my. I'm just staring at this thing, and I was looking at it, and it wasn't how to describe it. Like it was kind of oval shaped, and it had like it was big enough to like contain, you know, if you could see a human outline, it would be big enough to contain that. And I felt that it had consciousness because it seemed to be very purposefully crossing the road, and it was heading towards this because I looked to my right and saw that it was heading towards this standing stone. And as I saw it, I also felt that its energy was fascinating because it was when I see these figures that they're like a hole in the third dimension. They're an absence of light, an absence of energy in the third dimension, but clearly have presence. And I'm sure if I was like close enough to it and put my hand through it, that I would, I'd lightly feel something. Like it felt very tangible. It wasn't just, superimposed in my reality. It was definitely there. And it gradually made its way across the road, and then headed off up the hill, and it kind of accelerated off up the hill.
Huh.
And I remember not long after that, because at the time I was still watching ghost hunting shows, and I remember hearing like an indigenous American saying something like, when the ghost learned to travel on the wind. And that really resonated with me. It was like, that's what it was doing. Like it was traveling on this, like, there's a ley line that runs. It's not a very powerful one, but it runs out to that standing stone. And that's what it was doing. It was just going about its, daily work. It didn't feel super positive, but it didn't really, it's like it noticed me, but wasn't interested, just going about its daily business. And yeah, that was a very kind of vivid experience for me. Like the whole thing maybe was only, about 10 seconds, but was just so visceral for me.
Oh my goodness. That's an awesome. I love hearing people's stories. It's just people don't talk about this stuff. And I have a lot to say, which is why I'm really happy we're doing this podcast, because I'm thinking like back in like in my flashbacks or like in my memories, I'm like, why didn't I say anything? Why didn't I? And I'm like, well, I was probably going through a lot, but like still, like it just reminds me why I probably didn't feel like an opportunity to do those things or talk about these things.
Mhm.
It was especially confirming to me. I mean, although I was heavily indoctrinated in religion at the time, but the religious implication kind of gives like an idea of like, well, there's ghosts or there's spirits, or there's angels, or there's almost like these supernatural things or like miracles, and so
Mhm.
my mind was kind of already opened to that as well. And something interesting happened that I just was remembering like recently. My siblings, well, one of them, she gets scared easily. So when she says, "Oh, something, it's a ghost," I'm like, "No, it's not. You're just scared." Like she's really like jumpy like that. And I remember a couple of times, she thinks she sees me, and in my room there's like the bathroom is literally like right adjacent to the wall. It's like this one, and the bathroom's like literally right here.
Mhm.
And since my room is in a hallway, and she was also her room is also in the same hallway, lengthwise, and she would say that she sees me and it looks like me, but I'm not there, you know? And my dad also had the same thing happen where he thought he saw me and it wasn't me. And it was like my doppelganger or something.
Yeah.
And that was kind of freaky because they say if you see your own doppelganger that it means you're gonna die. And I was like, what the heck? Like I don't see anyone that I think is there that's my family that isn't there. Like they're
Mhm.
like my dad and my sibling are the only ones who've seen that, you know. And I kind of have a hard time like trusting their perspective, but it's family, I guess. I don't know. But at
It's
the same
a
time,
lot
it's
to
happened
process, right?
twice. Yeah, it's like it
Wow.
happened twice. Like, how does that happen where,
Yeah.
they think they see me and then they think like I'm in the hallway and then they go into my room and like they call for me and I'm not there, or I'm not in the restroom, I'm not in my room, and then they just turn around and they're like, "Where did she go?" And I'm just like, "Yeah, I wasn't there. I was at the grocery store. I was with mom. I was outside. I wasn't there." You know, and my parents or my dad and my sister, like they don't like get scared, but they do tell me like, "Hey, I had this experience. Like I thought you were here and it wasn't you, and I really thought it was you."
Mhm.
And one of the defining features was my hair, my curly hair. So they think that it's me because who else would be, who else would it be?
Yeah.
Because like all of my siblings have, curly hair like me. So, so it's just, who
And
was it? Was
their
it
brains
me?
will be thinking, yeah, they'll be thinking, in that, especially like initially, you just think, well, they're in the right place, right? And then it'd be like, and then the next check, do they have the right features? Like, well, they got Nova's features, like, and even if they're not entirely right, like if you got, a friend and dressed them up and like stuck them in that place very quietly, and you left the home, there would still be a few seconds where they'd be like, it wouldn't matter if they were if it was looked exactly like you or not. But usually after a few seconds, especially if you can see the face and the facial features, there will be, and depending on the person and their own sight, and also just what they're doing, right? Yeah, you'd start to get some recognition. I've had I I feel like there's so many possibilities about how that can happen, and I have had you know beings like imitate me, appear in people's dreams or in their homes and say, "Hi, I'm John Binnie," and it's as far as I consciously know and metaphysically know, it's not me, and there's certainly no intention for me to be there. Um, and then the other aspect that's really curious is that so it's possible for things to mimic us, right? Like it's not hard to fool another human. We know that from dressing up in disguises. Like it's pretty easy to even loved ones. But energetically, I've also seen people experience like multiple versions of themselves or of
Whoa.
loved ones. And yeah, one person, I think they I won't name them. They did talk about it publicly, where they actually had an encounter of seeing themselves. But interestingly, they consciously could see both versions at the same time. So like if John A and John B are looking at each other, you would see like it's like you would see two Johns, like you were experiencing both at the same time, which for me feels more like the soul can see, as having an experience of these two different incarnations or two different timelines or dimensions at the same time, which is super cool. And yeah, my daughter's experienced that before. She's seen my wife, like, or what she thought was my wife, and then later turned out to be another ghost. When she was young, coming in and out of her room, and it used to upset her because she didn't talk, and she thought that her mum was in a bad mood with her. But it's not always clear cut like that when it's not even your mother.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel I wanted to talk a little bit about some of my experiences with ghost hunting. Like if I describe before and after awakening, and perhaps another way of describing it is, especially in ghost hunting terms, is before I was psychic and now I'm psychic. And so prior to November 2017, as I to recap on some of those experiences I'd have, is that when I was watching a TV show about ghost hunting, it seemed exciting. It seemed like there were people being pretty brave, and that they knew a lot of the risks, or some of the risks at least, and would go into these places that it seemed, I don't know, it almost seemed justified if there was something bad in there, that you could go and give that bear a poke and make it do things so that you'd have some experience back and some sort of evidence, and all the things that technologies help advanced in the ghost hunting space. Like I remember, like there's like the spirit box, like things that sweep radio frequencies. I found absolutely fascinating the Microsoft Kinect, which is really old now. But when they started using that, and it's designed with a few different technologies to pick up beings movement, and it's designed for humans playing games. I first started experimenting with it in 2012, when I was in what was a really old school. It was a school going back hundreds of years during some sort of, I think, an influenza outbreak. And I thought it didn't work because every time I turned it on, I'd see these little figures behind me and the other people in the office. I'm like, this thing's terrible. I like keep seeing all these things. And I found it shocking when people started using it in ghost hunting. And, you've got a psychic saying, yes, I can see it. Then you turn on this thing and it's like got this little stick outline of like someone, wobbling around. And yeah, as the technologies have developed, it is, it's super fascinating and super compelling that there's more, especially the electromagnetic frequencies that you receive from other beings, or, temperature drops, etc. And I think also the thermal imaging. And when so really that was that. And I just started, when I went through my awakening, I don't know, I just kind of decided that this wasn't as interesting anymore. In fact, even UFOs I found less interesting because I felt like I was starting to experience things a lot more directly, and I didn't need to go and hunt on YouTube for these things. And so if I fast forward to today, and okay, it wasn't today. When the last time I watched the show was just at the turn of the year, early 2024, and I remember I was watching a Ghost Adventures episode, and because I felt strongly guided to watch these, and I was like, I don't know that that's a good idea. Like, I'm not sure I should, and I don't really want to attract in energies. And the first thing that I found shocking was when someone would go into like a haunted home. I could see where now I can see where the entity is in the home as I'm watching the video. I'm like, they're there, like they're next door. And then the next thing is like, I can hear footsteps next door. Like, oh wow, like you start getting this confirmation, like, well, how's that possible? How do I know what they're about to experience? And then I would start to feel immediately very uncomfortable because in part, the person that's about to do this doesn't know what's the other side in the other room. They're shouting, whatever's there, whoever you are, blah blah, and they're getting angry and trying to raise the
Provoke.
Provoke. Yeah, they're trying to raise the anxiety, like almost they know, like ghost hunters know that if they provoke lower vibration emotions, these anger and shame and fear, both in themselves and in the energy of the building that they're in, and obviously the ghost or the entity they want to provoke, that it escalates. And as I saw this happening, I realized that it wasn't just them that was going through that risk of like provoking something that they don't understand, but me just sat there watching the video. I felt exactly how that being felt or is feeling, because I do feel it's all happening at the same time in this quantum energy first reality. There's no TV barrier or phone barrier between me and that entity, that actually I'm right there in that room with those ghost hunters, and I'm sharing that risk just by watching it. And that the ghost hunters are getting excited because they're feeding off of this fear, and they're giving fear to beings that also feed off of fear. And it's like this escalation. And that shocked me. And I ended up, I think I watched maybe 4 or 5 episodes, and it wasn't just the being in the next room or the thing that they were, hunting and provoking that I see now. It's like, if you take down all the walls and all the barriers and all the human things that we believe are separating us from these entities, whatever they are, whether they're ghosts, whether demonic, whatever it is, then none of that siloing and barrier exists. And it definitely, absolutely does not exist for that entity. So when you go and provoke a ghost and then you watch someone doing it, you're as good as there. Like, you can just throw away your laptop and your phone and your TV and just say, well, I'm basically here experiencing this. And that, I felt it, because I felt their fear rising. I felt it in me, and I realized that's why I used to love it. That's why it was so exciting for me, because I felt that I was safe and that I was protected, and I was at least fairly physically, and that I was just watching someone else go through something. And how exciting is that they're having any kind of feedback. So yeah, that's one reason why I haven't watched anything since.
Yeah, we have these ideas of these barriers, but energetically, just because you don't feel it doesn't mean that you're not feeling it. And a good indicator of knowing that is our subconscious mind. Like, even if we're not necessarily psychic, right? Our subconscious mind does definitely notice. Our subconscious mind definitely pick up those things, like with the negative entities, and like they can affect my thoughts, and that's like a subconscious thing, like the dreams we're having. If you're having negative entities, even if you didn't see them or notice them, like you're dreaming about them, it's because your subconscious mind picked it up. So there's always some level of like things like interwoven. They're not necessarily barriers. It's just because you can't like see it or feel it, or you're not psychic, or even if you don't have dreams about it, like you're still like in that area. You're still putting yourself in there energetically. Um, which is it's kind of fascinating. And honestly, even though I know this, it's still kind of fascinating for me to watch ghost stuff a little bit. I kind of get bored with it a bit though, because it's
Mhm.
people don't recognize like ghost hunting is kind of boring. Like,
Yeah.
because like you're
It's like
just
fishing.
waiting. Yeah, it's like fishing. Exactly. That's why they have like the music, and they have like their overreactions to just anything.
Yeah.
Um and that's they kind of have to do a lot of like production, or that's why they do provoke, so that way
Mm.
they can get something, and that's what it's for. It's for evidence. Um but
Yeah.
it can feel very like entitled, in a way. It's like, do
Mhm.
you really like what you're doing? Are you just like bored and you just want to like provoke beings or entities or whatever, and you don't even know, like they treat them like your content, not like, this ghost used to be a person, this ghost used to have a backstory, or this being is here for this and that, and they don't treat these ghosts like beings. They kind of treat
Yeah.
them like a carnivore. It's like a freak show or something. And
Mhm.
sometimes I wonder if they ever, like you said, John, like when they're provoking the spirits and you feel like the spirits like being provoked, or you feel, like the energy of that. I can only imagine that, that's probably why ghosts don't want to talk to us.
Yeah,
Because of
that's
our
right. Yeah.
because we're so entitled, and we're so self-absorbed, and in some cases, we feel like we're entitled to proof, that we're entitled to evidence, and like we're putting, the attention further. But the way they're interacting with the energy, they're treating it like it's an object,
Yeah, that's right. And
and
that
they want
somehow they're
recognition. Yeah.
yeah, like somehow they're trespassing on our reality. Like they shouldn't be here. They're like you say, it's like some sort of a freak. But yeah, the reality is they're in their own dimension, across the third and fourth dimension, and they are often you hear psychics saying things like, they've never met a happy ghost, or they never, that people that I have met at least two happy ghosts, um, just last October, and they were very much in love and really loved looking after the place that they were in some old state, about 200-year-old stables, and I was very rude to them, and I told them to leave, and I instantly, felt really bad, and they came back, and I apologized, and we, drew some clear boundaries, like just to give me some space while I was attending a meditation teaching class. So it was like, yeah, I'd say a lot of the time, to your point, like most of the time, these entities are unhappy. They're either unhappy, kind of, humans or ex-humans, or in between being human. They're like they'll be human again, but even worse, where they're much darker, much lower vibration, that they actually want you to provoke them. And you might think that it's not ghost hunting. It's being hunted by a ghost. It's being hunted by a demon. And I'm sure if they change the titles of their shows, you might still have some people watching it, but it is probably closer to the truth that you're not hunting them, they're hunting you.
Yeah. I don't really watch that stuff as much. Sometimes if I'm really bored, sometimes I will. Sometimes a thumbnail might get my attention, but like for the most part, I always felt like they do what they can as ghost hunters, but I always feel like I don't get really information. Like there really isn't anything, like it's investigation, but they have a very limited like scope of what they're
Yeah.
working with. Like they don't work with their own body and their own energy system. They don't work, if they're not psychic, a lot of people, aren't, or don't want to, be a public psychic,
Yeah.
because there's also like the publicity, the drama sometimes, and people say you're not a real psychic, or this person's faking, or it's just society doesn't really value these things as much, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like we're kind of looking at ghost hunting through this materialistic paradigm, through this entitlement paradigm, and this idea of proof and evidence, and it's very strange to me, because like science is supposed to like work with like repeatable phenomena, and yet like
Yeah.
ghost hunting is not entirely repeatable. I mean, sometimes like there might be like, oh, this door opens, but you can't just like know when it's going to open, or something falls, or there's a knock. Like you can't always like get that, to like
Yeah.
test it sometimes, and that's the thing. It's like a lot of people are coming at this with a certain perspective within their own paradigm, but the reality is that they're trying to expand their paradigm, but they're doing it with a very closed mind,
Yeah.
so it's very like it's counterproductive in a way. It's
Yeah.
still fascinating, it's still interesting, you could still learn stuff, right? But you
Mhm.
don't actually get to expand more. And as I got older and I started to learn more, about energy work, and the occult, and psychic, and all these things, especially involved in like shadow work, and even with my own experiences with seeing a ghost or seeing shadow beings, and things like that. Like we like to talk about these things because it's good that we're not alone. But the one thing that really bothered me is like, well, who knows about these things? Like, who can actually tell me, if I see this being, like, what is this being there? Or why was this shadow being there? Or what did they do? And
Yeah.
when I got into shadow work in late 2018, and I had met, somebody, and they were talking about shadow work, and and at the time, I already graduated and I was 18, and I was seeing these things, and not only the shadow beings, the ghosts, but also like in my third eye and having dreams, and like demonic dreams, and stuff like that. But someone was actually talking about like shadow work, um, you know, deconstructing like religious dogma that was caused me to
Mhm.
be in a low vibration. And then when they mentioned these entities, when they mentioned, these beings, I'm like, yes, I've seen that. And like, yeah, I was also in religion too. I'm like, oh, wait a second, this is why I had this experience, because my vibration was so low, and I was attracting these beings, and seeing them, and they were also probably attracted
Yeah.
to me because of my fear or my anxiety, and things like that, and that was a really grounded, somewhat more grounded perspective, rather than just, oh, it's a mystery, or like, oh, why am I seeing this, or
Yeah.
and I really loved and appreciate that. But that's the thing, that when we talk about the idea of like a low vibration or religious indoctrination, or beliefs, limiting beliefs that bring us down to that, it's kind of controversial in a way, because some people, they see a ghost, and all of a sudden they think they need to be Christian, or they think that they have to convert. Sometimes they don't convert. Sometimes they're just like, I can't explain it, but this is what it is, but sometimes people like to have like a certain proof to like dedicate themselves to a belief system,
Yeah.
and I've seen
Yeah.
that so many times, and I could talk about that more, but I won't, because we don't have that much time.
That's
But
fine.
when we do, I will talk about that more in detail, because I've noticed
Yeah,
that
I'd love
pattern
to.
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but what else was I gonna say? Um, I forgot what I was talking about. I went on a tangent.
It's
Oh yeah,
okay.
talking about like, what is this stuff? Okay, so I actually was doing some research a little bit, and most of the stuff that talks about like spirits, and ghosts, and entities, like that, you're gonna find that in occult books, and it's not gonna be called ghost hunting. It's not gonna be called paranormal. It's gonna be called something else, and it just depends. Like for some reason, and I get this, like the occult kind of has its own self-respect, and like by the way you title things, or the way you word things, it kind of brings in a certain audience, right? But like the stuff that's in the shadow work, like you think you just want to learn about ghosts, or you think you just want to understand about shadow beings, but just like me, what I end up finding out, like, oh, this was about my shadows, this was about my traumas, this was about, and here I was thinking, oh, someone understands, what I see, but then I'm understanding, oh, that's why I understand. That's why they understand, because we both had a similar experience.
Mhm.
Um, and this friend at the time who was talking about these things, he was more, psychically, tuned, and so like I got their perspective, and a perspective that I could relate to, and a perspective that made so much sense. So here's the thing: it's like having these mystical experiences, or having these ghostly encounters, it's something that a lot of people like to have, but the reality is that, it kind of changes you, and it kind of questions you, and it kind of makes you wonder, what the boundaries are, what anything means, and when we have an experience, we have an interpretation of our experience, right? And that gets filtered through our ego, right? So sometimes if you have like a more religious ego, like your perception of a spirit or a ghost or an angel might be different than someone else who has the same experience, because it's just based on, someone who's more scientifically minded, they'll think, oh, there's some rational explanation. Someone who's more religious, they might, believe in that, oh, it's a paranormal thing, and it just is someone who's psychic definitely knows what it is, so it's really strange how these perspectives kind of like interact with one another and how we see the differences in these things. And it's very important, to at least, everyone can believe what they believe, and everyone has their own system, right, of beliefs, or maybe they don't have a healthy sense of self, or maybe they don't know what to believe, but keeping things open, is how we actually learn. That's what humility is, so if you have a paradigm of, and you want to see things a certain way, like you actually don't learn. You think, well, this is what this authority says. So the authority of science says this isn't real. The authority of religion says this is what it is. The authority of the psychic says what, but it's important that it's like, okay, can we look at these things?
Yeah.
But like, can we remain open-minded? Like, can we continue learning instead of learning like in a little box,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And I've had dreams of interacting with ghosts. I have dreams where, I'll be in the living room or the kitchen or my room, and the light will like turn on and off, like in paranormal, hunting, there'll be something messing with the lights, and they'll be talking to this thing and they'll say, blink twice for no, or blink once for yes, or something. And I would have dreams where I'm talking to something that I can't see it, but I know that I'm talking to a ghost. And I know because of the lights, and it's just the way it's set up. Like, this is like a paranormal dream, but they didn't feel bad and they weren't scary, but those sometimes happen to be kind of often.
Yeah.
And as I was looking, more into like my own personal astrology and just in my own experiences, like, I definitely, have gifts, in this realm, right? I'm not working on them yet because I'm working on my shadow work and other stuff though, but I've been collecting resources. I've been collecting books. Like, the people that kind of know more about these things, like, they don't go on like paranormal shows. They don't go like, they're not about that space the way it's like, it's ghost hunting as an entertainment versus ghost hunting as an investigation. There's a different thing. And people that have more of that prestige, or they kind of know things, they don't hang around in those communities. Like, they don't go there, because if they're involved in the occult, or they're a witch or something, like, people don't want to hear that, but it's like, but they want proof of ghosts, or they want more information, but they don't want to hear it from someone, who's an occultist, or someone, maybe they don't want to hear it from a medium, or even then, there are some mediums that are Christian, so sometimes their perspective is a little bit different on that, and like, it just depends, just because, someone, has information, or someone is like more in tune, you don't always have to believe their interpretation. But what is beautiful is that all these paradigms, they're not denying what is there. Like, they all know it's there, but they just have different attitudes or different ideas about
Different
it.
perspectives,
Yeah, but they all know it's there. They all know that it's something interesting, and that's the beauty of it.
That's fascinating. And before we come to an end, I wanted to reflect a little bit, like some of the things said about, and still believe about ghost hunting is like, everyone gets to choose. And to some, like, to a large extent, I never would have known what I have experienced, what I feel now, and my own kind of evolution of my own mental models and understanding of reality. Back then, I thought that energy kind of floated in between and sometimes through matter. And little did I know that actually it's the other way around, that, matter is created by energy. And so if that ghost in the same room as you, it just sees you as another being, but can tell that that your energy is also creating physical form. I also, to encourage everyone to just practice their discernment, and, and if they've watched this and heard an alternative viewpoint, next time, if you do choose to ghost hunt either in person or watch other people doing it, to just feel into, like, how does it make you feel? Like, what are the feelings that are, compelling you to find this entertaining? And if it feels good for you, like, and you decide what to do, it's totally up to you. I would say for me, and I wanted to recall my most recent ghost experience, which was just last week. In fact, I was walking with a client in some woods near where we just did a session, and we were walking down a path, and there's no one around us. It was very quiet, and this is much more common about what I do now when I see ghosts, which almost every day. And there's man like stuck his body out from the side of a tree, like his head. I could just see his head and his top of his torso. And he looked over and he's like looking at, and he might have even almost like a wave, like a single like, just to catch my attention. And I looked over, and because I'd seen him, and to me, like I could, draw if I can draw his flat cap, and he had this like this kind of tweed suit on. He's like well dressed, but worked in the estate that we were walking in. And my guess is, like, my feeling was around about 100, somewhere between 100 and 150 years ago. And so I stopped, and I just said to my client, I said, I've just seen this ghost. I'm just going to stop for a moment. I'd just like to greet it. And even though it's at a fair distance, maybe it's about 20 meters away, I just stopped and I just said, hello, thank you for showing yourself. Thank you so much. And I saw it, like, this man, like, just step out briefly outside of fully to the side of the tree, and he was just saying hello. And he explained to me that he was like a groundskeeper, and he continues to do that work energetically after his physical death, and that he's like what do you call it, like a custodian, like one of the guardians that looks after the area. And I just thanked him. I said, thank you so much for showing yourself. Thank you for, and I felt like it was a really beautiful connection. I felt like next time I go there, I'll be, consciously saying, hello, is it okay if I come into these areas, whether we're just walking or doing more work? And what fascinates me is our future of using much stronger emotions like love energy. Because that's what I felt with him. I felt this kinship. I felt like perhaps he did recognize me from a previous life. I do remember lifetimes about 100 years ago quite vividly. And that connection felt really strong. And it felt like almost like I walked away with that love connection, just like he would. And that perhaps our future is more about us, coexisting and understanding in our hearts. Like, how does it feel when you see something that is so-called paranormal, and it becomes more normalized, especially as this planet's vibration increases and the veil between us and the fourth and fifth dimensions like thins and thins and thins, and sort of like, hey buddy, like, come along to my podcast. I have an extra microphone. I feel like there is a beautiful future in this sort of work if we choose it.
Yeah, I love that idea. It's like seeing spirits and like ghosts and beings like just as real as any other part of nature, and just interacting with it, being mindful with it, coexisting with it, and just treating it with respect, which is what we should have been doing all along, honestly. But some people, the entitlement and the provoking, some people, they don't get it. It kind of dehumanizes spirits, which I don't blame them for not talking to us or for anything like that. Like people, they ghost hunt, they don't even introduce themselves. Like they don't even like. It's really weird. And then they put a camera, like they shove a camera in your face and like do something. You know what I mean? It's just like, yeah, especially like when there's like children spirits, and it's like you got to be more respectful, like coexist and things like that. But that's just something I get as an idea. I've never been ghost hunting, and I really, really, really want to, even though it might be boring, but I still want to do it. It's fascinating. It's amazing. I don't know. It's just, I always wanted to do that. Maybe the TV makes it look fun. I don't know, but I would like to do that one day. Well, just one day. Yeah.
I would definitely do it for the right intention. For the intention of helping. Sometimes spirits just want to be seen, They want to be heard. They want their history to be told. You know, our history is so warped everywhere, right around the world. It's like, it's always like the winner that, you know, took over the castle told a story about the horrible family that used to live there or whatever. And actually they just want their truth heard. And some want help, like they're trapped and they really want to be released. They're stuck there by their own shadows. I would definitely do it for the right reasons. But yeah, you get to choose, right? Everyone gets to choose.
Yeah, that's something I'd hope I could like do like one day. Because if there's just more to interact with and there's more to be of service to instead of just like entertainment, you know, maybe one day, maybe one day. I'm hoping in our next podcast we could like continue like the conversation because there's just so much. You know, we haven't even touched upon like demons or anything like that yet. So
that's right.
I'm excited.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Nova. And yeah, please do. If someone has got all the way through, should I say, for all the people that have got through to the hour of this podcast, yeah, please do let us know in the comments what subjects you'd like us to look at next. And yeah, I'd love to keep going on this theme. I think it's really powerful and important because it helps underpin so much of our future, right? It's like if we ignore these things and pretend they're not real, we just deny a huge part of our own selves, our own shadows, and also these, poor souls that are wandering around lost and need help, frankly, not poked like a bear.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. I look forward to providing getting together for another podcast soon. And thank you so much, Nova. Take care. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.